is the Judiciary Subcommittee on House Bill 3094. We have changed the meeting room because the Senate will be going into session at 10, and we are reconvening where we left off on Tuesday morning, April 27th. At this time, it's my understanding that we have several people who have logged in who would like to testify virtually. I will ask Mr. Maldonado if he would give us a brief summary of the bill.
This bill is called the Open Carry with Training Act. This bill would allow the concealed weapon permit holders to carry a concealed weapon openly on them or in their motor vehicles. Property owners could post conforming signage to allow or prohibit either concealed or open carry weapons or both to be carried on their property. Also, the training for licensure adds instructions on properly securing a firearm in a holster, what's called cock and lock training, firearms carrying methods for responding to anyone who attempts to take a CWP holder's firearms from their holsters, and hostile situation de-escalation techniques. Any governing body exercising authority granted them under this bill to allow public protests, rallies, fairs, parades, festivals, or other organized events to restrict carrying weapons on it must specify the area, duration, and manner of any restrictions that have been imposed and give prior notice of these restrictions when feasible. That's the summary.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maldonado. Before we get into the folks that have logged in to testify, it's my policy to swear in witnesses, so I'm going to swear each one of you in. I'm going to ask that each person limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We may have to make it shorter than that, depending on how we move through the meeting. If we have questions of the witness, then we may go beyond the 3 minutes. I know some people said something about that from 2 days ago, but there were a couple of witnesses that went further than 3 or 4 minutes because we had questions and there was a lengthy discussion back and forth with some of those witnesses. So in any event, one more thing is that we have 3 other senators on this panel, and they will be here sometime shortly. And so we're going to go ahead and proceed with the testimony. Are they in? They log in any particular order?
You can just read through the whole list. I think that's more.
All right. So Annie Andrews.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you. Tell us who you are and where you're from, and if you're with an organization.
Yep, my name is Dr. Annie Andrews. I am from Charleston, and I am not with any organization. I'm here on behalf of myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning. Again, my name is Dr. Annie Andrews. I am a board certified pediatrician, and I've been practicing in Charleston since 2009. I'm also a member of the South Carolina Academy of Pediatrics. I am a gun violence prevention researcher, and I work with a national pediatric firearm injury research team full of surgeons and pediatricians working to reduce the burden of these preventable injuries on children in our country. And I am here to express my strong opposition to House Bill 3094. So after hearing the testimony and discussion in this body on Tuesday, it became evident to me that there are people here testifying and people planning to vote in support of this bill that don't seem to understand the scope of the problem of gun violence in our community. We heard that we need open carry so people don't have to feel their firearms rubbing against their skin on hot days. In the House, I heard that we need open carry because concealed carry holsters make it uncomfortable for people to reach the top shelf in the grocery store. We got bogged down discussing how often we have seen people open carry in cities outside of South Carolina. So I want to ask you, how many of you have ever seen a child with bullet holes in them? And this is not hyperbole. I'm not here to be dramatic. This is the reality for those of us who work in the medical community. It's the reality in communities all across our state where gun violence is the leading cause of death for children. So you have already heard from law enforcement officers like Chief Reynolds, and today you will hear from several physicians who are also on the front lines of the gun violence crisis. We don't have the luxury of looking away. We choose to practice in this state and serve our communities. And as long as there are victims of gun violence, we will be here to try to put their bodies back together and support them and their families as they try to put their lives back together. You have also already heard that research has shown that the presence of a visible gun is linked to more aggressive and violent behavior, and that open carry can create substantial confusion for law enforcement. Gun violence is preventable. This body should be working to implement evidence-based solutions that would reduce the incidence of these injuries and deaths. You have gun violence prevention experts in this state, including me, who can help you to do that. So please let us help you. But unfortunately, again, today you are considering a bill that will not protect our children, but it's also actually a threat to public safety. And I will just end by saying that as a pediatrician, it really has been an honor to serve the children and families of this state for over a decade. You all trust me when your children are injured and sick and when your families are at their most vulnerable. So please trust me and the medical community when we tell you about the devastation we see inside the hospital every day as a result of gun violence. One bullet-riddled child is too many. Help us make this community safer, and please vote no on House Bill 3094. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. I have a question. I want to thank you, first of all, for your service and your commitment to children as a pediatrician. Are you familiar with gun violence statistics as it relates to South Carolina in comparison to other states?
Yes.
Where does South Carolina compare in gun violence to a state, say like Illinois?
Well, so we're in the top 10.
Where is Illinois?
I actually don't know that off the top of my head.
Or New York? Do you know where we are in comparison to New York?
We're worse than New York.
And what about California?
Yes, we're worse than California.
Okay. What are some of the factors that contribute to gun violence in South Carolina?
It's a complex issue. Poverty contributes to gun violence. Weak gun laws contribute to gun violence. There's been several studies published in the medical literature by colleagues of mine that show an association between weak gun laws and an increased incidence of pediatric firearm injuries, including unintentional shootings, homicides, and suicides.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any more questions? Notice that Senator Massey has now joined us. Any other questions for Dr. Andrews? If not, thank you, Dr. Andrews.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm just going down the list. Cindy Slafka.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And where are you from?
I live in Fort Mill.
And are you with any particular organization?
No, with myself.
All right, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks so much for allowing me to share my thoughts on House Bill 3094. My name is Cindy Slafka, and I live in Fort Mill with my husband and 3 children. I'm here to oppose House 3094 because of those 3 children whose safety is my primary concern. I grew up in the Army. My husband served in the Navy, and my father, father-in-law, and husband all grew up hunting. Guns have a purpose in our society, and I have no argument with that. I would like to mention that gun ownership is not a God-given right. It's a policy enacted by people via our Constitution. I feel that House 3094 is a solution in search of a problem. We already allow people with CWPs to carry their firearms in public if they feel the need to do so. Allowing people to carry openly does nothing to improve public safety. In fact, we know that the presence of a visible gun causes people to behave more aggressively. I'm sitting here this morning reflecting on the fact that just down the road from me in Rock Hill, the death rate by gun has already doubled over last year, in the first 4 months of this year. Why aren't we diving into the causes of this increase in gun violence? Why aren't we trying to improve access to mental health care, passing red flag laws to allow families to temporarily remove firearms from those in crisis? Why aren't we requiring background checks on all gun sales and banning the purchase of ghost guns online? Why aren't we looking into what causes people to become so desperate in their lives that they resort to gun violence? When this bill was in the House members voted against allowing people to openly carry at the State House. So even lawmakers don't want visible guns in their presence. Deep down, they know that this would reduce their safety, not improve it. Why reduce all our safety by allowing guns to be carried out in the open? Last night, I received a voicemail from Representative Bruce Bryant, former York County Sheriff. He was reaching out to respond to my question to him as to why he had stated during the House Subcommittee reading regarding this bill that he had heartburn over it. Representative Bryan told me that he held his nose and voted this bill forward because he had been assured that this would keep permitless or constitutional carry from being advanced. Of course, then the House advanced a permitless carry bill. I understand that lawmakers sometimes have to make trade-offs to meet their own objectives for their constituents. But Representative Bryant told me that he prays this bill will not pass the Senate and that I should contact my York County senators, Senators Johnson and Clymer, and beg them not to pass this bill. Well, Senators Johnson and Clymer are not part of this subcommittee, but you are. So I beg you to vote no on House 3094 and instead focus on legislation to improve the quality of life here in South Carolina and thereby improve all our safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Slafka. Appreciate your testimony. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I don't see any. We'll move to the next person. Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor Willis.
Hello?
It's Terry Taylor.
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. If you would,
Hey,
please
good
raise your right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, Mr. Taylor, where are you from?
I'm from Greenville,
All right.
and right now I'm sitting in Oconee County, which I wanted to respond to your questioning from the meeting the other day. You were asking people if they'd ever been to Charlotte or Atlanta and seen open carry occurring, and most people said no. However, I have another cabin over in Oconee County, and I do venture into rural Georgia at times. And in fact, I have seen guns being openly carried in the rural parts of Georgia, northeastern Georgia. We actually went to a restaurant to eat some really good barbecue, and they had a sign that said, basically, your guns are welcome here. So we walked out and went somewhere else. I think the cause for that is I've talked to my city council members in Greenville, who the majority of them are opposed to this because in their minds, they have the pulse of a Greenville community, and they do not see any business allowing guns in their place of business, which this bill will allow a business owner to put up a sign. Well, the problem is, and I've talked to two police chiefs that have served in Greenville. The problem in Greenville is a lot of guns are being stolen out of cars. There's a lot of activity downtown Greenville. If someone wants to carry their gun into a place of business, like go eat at a restaurant, restaurant has a sign, then they have to walk back to the car and put the gun in the car. So in essence, in a city like Greenville, I can only see guns being carried in a somewhat intimidating fashion, just walking up and down the streets of the city. That's just my take on it. What does more guns do in cars and places? Just 2 weeks ago in West Asheville, where I have some family, there was road rage about a mile from where my daughter lived, and they pulled over at the side of the road. Someone cut someone off in traffic, and it wound up one driver shot and killed the other one, and the driver drove off. Now, I assume they both were law-abiding citizens before road rage took over their rational thinking. And there were probably good licensed drivers who had passed the test. Training and permitting a gun owner does not ensure that they are going to not get angry, not have their tendencies toward mental illness flare up in a volatile situation. My wife and I raised two children. They're 40 and 36 now, and that we have 3 grandchildren. The conversations that I had with my kids growing up, going through schools, is quite different from the ones my grandchildren are experiencing. What really bothers me is my grandchildren go through active shooter drills on a regular basis in their schools. They're taught that someone with a gun openly displayed, it could be a dangerous person. Now they are asked to go down, when they're taken downtown to go out to eat or go to some place of public, they're going to see people with openly carrying guns. What is that conversation going to be like? And what are the children going to do as they try to process that information?
Mr. Taylor,
Yes, sir.
we are about 3 minutes in. I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments.
Well, I do appreciate the opportunity. I worked for years with Mothers Against Drunk Driving as a county rep for 15 years. And we saw problems in a sensible manner to reduce drunk driving. And I would hope that the committee would do the same with guns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For your comments. You may have any questions. Mr. Taylor, I would note that the bill, as I understand it, does not change the existing law as to restrictions on where you can carry. All it does is change how.
Yes, sir. And that's a big problem.
Beg pardon?
And I see that as a big problem.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Vicki Simons,
Yes, sir, I'm here.
good morning. Ms. Simons, if you would please raise your right hand.
Yes, sir.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, self you got.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Simons, I understand you're from Aiken County.
I am, and I'm representing myself today.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Self-defense is a God-given right. Genesis 14 in the Bible records that Abram and his 318 armed, trained men rescued his nephew Lot, Lot's family, and their possessions after they'd been kidnapped. Afterwards, Melchizedek, who is both king of Salem and priest of God Most High, blessed Abram, meaning that God blessed Abram's use of the arms of his day for self-defense. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 20 of the South Carolina Constitution state that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. SCDHEC published statistics in 2018 about the rising number of homicides here, including the fact that in the USA, South Carolina has the 7th highest rate of homicides and 6th highest rate of homicides caused by firearms. In Kennesaw, Georgia, which has a mandatory gun possession ordinance requiring, with exceptions, all households to have a gun, there were 3 murders between 2007 and 2019. In free countries, citizens can defend themselves. Training and permitting requirements are unconstitutional infringements on the right to keep and bear arms, and states with these legal requirements have elevated their standards above God's. It is an economic hardship for some people to pay for gun training, fingerprinting, and a concealed weapons permit fee. Forcing citizens to wait to get a gun permit to defend themselves puts them at risk of violent crime. It is unjust for state law to make unpermitted concealed weapons use a crime. Without a gun, most Americans are defenseless at the hands of gunmen. Regarding defensive gun use, a 2013 CDC report stated that in the USA, firearms are used in self-defense between 500,000 and 3 million times every year. If guns do not save lives, then why are federal, state, and local law enforcement agents and the Secret Service issued guns? Law enforcement's average response time is 18 minutes. Even so, police do not have a constitutional duty to protect citizens from harm. Armed citizens already on site can protect themselves and their neighbors. Every law-abiding South Carolinian needs to be able to carry a firearm for self-defense without having to crawl to the government for permission to do so. Only constitutional carry allows for the legal carrying of a handgun, either openly or concealed, without a license or permit. Senators, you must uphold your oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. I very strongly urge you to vote in favor of H.3094 and then amend it in the full Judiciary Committee to make this bill truly constitutional carry. Do you have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Simons? If not, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan McLeod.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Ms. McLeod, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. Thank you for letting me speak with you this morning. When I listen to people talk about the Second Amendment, I notice that the emphasis is not on the first four words, which is well-regulated militia. It's important to remember that the Second Amendment was written when there was not a standing, centralized military to, help out in situations that were, could be escaped slaves or could be conflicts with Native Americans or a threat to landowning white people. These were not trained people. And as soon as the country could afford to train and organize, the citizenry was privileged to call on these professionals. They did not crawl to them and handle disagreements in dangerous situations. Also, as I am listening to this, I'm continually amazed that no advocates for H.3094 speak of the elephant in the room, which is interference of ingrained prejudices centuries in the making, or psychological triggers of individuals who have had their psyches so damaged that a quick, balanced assessment of whose drawn gun is the righteous drawn gun is impossible. You've heard from doctors, you've heard from law enforcement folks, or about doctors and law enforcement folks who deal with the consequences of our gun laws every day. Please consider the weight and ramifications of the gun laws currently before you from your safe position, from the rare or practically non-existent possibility of encountering a so-called bad person with a gun. You are not experts. You are hearing from experts like the Charleston Police Chief or the Charleston County Sheriff, the Richland County Sheriff, the former head of SLED, Robert Stewart, or Mark Keels, the current head of SLED, for heaven's sakes. They are openly and decisively against this legislation. Legislators are men and women elected to make informed decisions on the way all South Carolinians have to live their lives for years to come. Please open your minds and adopt an informed, empathetic view and listen to those who are in the trenches every day with the decisions this body makes on guns and public safety. Please oppose 3094. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLeod. Where are you from?
I'm from Greenville.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. McLeod? If not, thank you very much again for your testimony. Gary Smith. Gary Smith. Looks like we got Gary Smith. Would you please raise your right?
Right here.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm from Charleston, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm just going to ask everyone here, especially our senators, just to get quiet inside for a moment. Perhaps close your eyes and really consider this. You're in the cereal aisle. The man with your child or your grandchild, the man comes down the aisle with his eyes darting from side to side, and a semi-automatic handgun on his hip that can take out a couple dozen people in the time it takes to swig a tall glass of water. Now it's on you to decide, what is this man's intentions? Are his eyes darting because he's nervous about a big job interview he's about to go to? Are they darting because he's on his way to his doctor's to find out the results of a biopsy for cancer? If you've got a heartbeat, that's an incredibly uncomfortable situation. It's going to happen all the time if this bill gets passed. Now let's consider another situation very likely to happen. You, or perhaps worse, your daughter, your sister, is in a movie theater with their child, perhaps your grandchild, your niece, with that child you love in a completely dark room, and coming down the aisle, taking a seat right beside you or her is a man with that weapon right there on his hip. Are his eyes darting because he's anxious about a big test he's about to take after the movie? Or is he one of the far too many angry and alienated Americans who have no mental diagnosis or courtroom adjudication that would deem them unfit for a permit? They're just angry and alienated. How can you in that cereal aisle or you in that movie theater possibly know the answer to that question? But now it's on you to decide, because a group of legislators, rather than considering what's best and safest for a large community of human beings, we're more worried about a vocal and relatively small minority of people who couldn't even walk into a Walmart or Harris Teeter without feeling like they have to be openly carrying a gun. A group of legislators who ignore the genuine concerns of the vast majority of South Carolina citizens, business owners, hospitality workers, parents, and grandparents who want no part of this. Just allow open carry, these legislators might say. Any business owner can put up a sign on the outside saying no guns allowed. Well, that's not realistic. Most business owners either don't want to put up a large sign to meet those stipulations because of aesthetics. They put a lot of time into making a welcoming storefront, or because they don't want the hassle of the angry few coming in and screaming about that sign. So they just don't bother with it and hope. Well, none of this is good enough. Kicking the problems into the hands of business owners, bar and restaurant and shop proprietors, not in a state with the 4th highest rate of gun homicides in this country, not in a country where the gunshots are now the leading cause of death among our children and teenagers. Think about that. Our children and teenagers, their likeliest cause of death is gunshot. Our American youth, 65 times likelier to be killed by a gun than a youth in the United Kingdom. How can we take this information into our hearts and even consider increasing the number of people carrying guns on our streets? These tragic numbers aren't occurring in a vacuum. They're arising from conditions of fear and larger numbers of people that feel alienated, a populace that feels it must have a gun nearby. Adding to this number of people walking around openly carrying guns will only add to this fear, convince more people they need to carry a gun.
Mr. Smith, if I could, we're at 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. As you can tell, I'm urging you to please do not allow this form of open carry permitted, which cannot prevent people who have no diagnosis or been educated by a judge, or doesn't prevent so many people who are going to be carrying guns and creating this scenario and creating more fear in our streets. It's the last thing we need. Please stand against open carry.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions? Mr. Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person is Ashley Hink, and while we're getting her lined up, I want to recognize Bobby Cox. Representative Cox is the sponsor of the bill in the House. He's present with us at this hearing.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Ashley Hink. I'm a trauma surgeon from Charleston, South Carolina, representing myself.
Good morning, Dr. Hink. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you very much.
As a trauma surgeon and a firearm violence researcher with national organizations, I'm on the front lines of the physical and emotional and psychological fight to protect our community members from preventable firearm deaths that disproportionately burden children, young adults, and minorities, especially in our state, which has one of the highest homicide rates in the country. And to answer some questions asked earlier, based on the most up-to-date CDC data from 2019 that is publicly available, we've risen to the 4th highest firearm homicide rate in the country, 3 times that of California, New York, and higher than Illinois. I'm also an expert in the science of preventing firearm injuries and knowledgeable about the epidemiology of this crisis and programs and policies that increase the risk of injury and ones that are protective. I'm also a citizen, a community member in Charleston that wants to live in a place that is safe and values the lives of its people. For all these reasons, I'm against open carry and all policies that put our citizens in danger and falsely offer security masquerading as representations of freedom that actually promote the opposite. This past year has been a challenge on so many fronts, but the burden of injuries and death secondary to firearms in South Carolina has been profound and has not gained the attention it warrants. You might want to call it a fluke, blaming it on the complexities of COVID, but the reality is that our homicide rates from firearms have been rising for years. Our state is not the same as other states, especially since many other states that have open carry have other protective laws in place. What would otherwise be a slow few months in my level 1 trauma center is nothing more than an onslaught of death and suffering. As an example, on a typical Monday afternoon recently, I had to treat 3 people with life-threatening firearm injuries. This is not the norm and it is not acceptable. People have argued here that easier access allows individuals to defend themselves better. Open carry does not do this. It promotes intimidation, it increases easy access to firearms, and it has no evidence to save lives through what would be considered appropriate defensive use. Let me be clear, evidence does not show that increased firearm access protects us. If this were the case, we wouldn't have one of the highest firearm death rates in the entire world. In addition, impairment from alcohol and other substances, impulsiveness from a life crisis, a brief conflict waiting in line at a store or bar, perpetration of intimate partner violence, or the often misinterpreted threat of harm in daily interactions all contribute to increased risk for the owner, the bystander, or the loved one that may access and use the firearm to hurt themselves or someone else. We need a reality check. We have some of the poorest health outcomes in the country and one of the highest homicides rates, neither of which are getting better. If we want to promote and protect life, especially of children, and address systemic inequity, we should be working to create policies and fund programs that are demonstrated to actually reduce injury and death, including universal background checks, child access prevention laws, lengthening waiting periods, increasing penalties for illegal firearm use, and funding community and hospital-based violence intervention programs. We should promote policies that reflect that we care about the lives of our citizens over having a gun on your hip. Open carry is not a policy that promotes that we protect life and value it. As an expert in firearm injury research and a physician caring for people in our community who are dying from this, I respectfully encourage you to reject open carry. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you, Doctor. One question I have is you made a comment that other states that have open carry have other protective laws in place. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a number of other states that do have open carry, they actually sometimes have true universal background checks so that every firearm purchase, whether it's from a federally licensed dealer or not, has to actually go through a true background check. They don't have loopholes, for instance, like we have, where many guns can be acquired without a true background check. Some other states have waiting periods, in addition to laws that hold adults accountable for allowing children to access firearms. And all of these laws are demonstrated to actually reduce the risk of homicide, suicides, and unintentional injury.
All right, and do you have any idea if there's been any study in South Carolina as to the percentage of concealed weapon permit holders that are involved in these gun death statistics that you referenced?
That data doesn't exist anywhere because the federal government has made it very hard for us to study gun violence as a public health problem. We don't have good data and tracking of firearms in our country because that has been very prohibitive. What we do know is that yes, there's a lot of people that use illegal firearms that were obtained legally initially, right? That might have entered the black market or have been stolen. There's no question about that. But there are many legal firearm owners that commit violent crimes such as mass shootings, intimate partner violence, especially. Most of those individuals that do use firearms and intimate partner violence actually typically have obtained it legally. And so again, there's just not a lot of great data available. And so the research isn't there to answer that question specifically. But we do have data that shows that collectively, these stronger policies tend to reduce firearm related injuries.
All right, when you said adult accountability laws, what do you know what those are? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So these laws basically say that if a child accesses your firearm as the firearm holder and uses it to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, that the adult can be legally held accountable. And that can come in the form of prison time as a form of neglect and allowing access to the firearm. And again, these laws do demonstrate that in states that have them, it reduces unintentional injury and suicide rates among children.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Kempson has joined us. Senator Dr. Heek is from Charleston.
She is. I know her and Dr. Andrews, and they do good work at MUSC.
All right,
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Heek? If not, we'll move to the next person. Thank you, Dr. Heek.
Thank you for having me.
Peter Zalka.
Yes, sir. I'm right here.
All right, Mr. Zalka, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, of the truth, self you got?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Where are you from?
Charleston, South Carolina. I'm here on behalf of myself.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Peter Zalka. I am 65 years old. I moved to Charleston with my family in 2004. I am a CWP holder, and I feel my 2A rights are secure here in South Carolina. When I was 35, I was held up in a robbery with two other coworkers. We were face down on the office floor, and a gun was at the back of my head. I am blessed to be here, and I strongly oppose 3094. In 2015, after the Mother Emanuel murders, I traveled to Greenville to give testimony at a legislative panel. That panel was going to different parts of South Carolina to listen to citizens about life and death issues related to gun violence prevention. Reverend Pinckney's widow was sitting a few feet from the lectern that evening. Each year, the South Carolina Committee on Children travels across South Carolina in person and virtually to listen to citizens' concerns and remedies on the issues, often life and death issues, related to the health and well-being of our children and youth. What is the rush on passing 3094? Why are we not having a statewide conversation about gun rights and public safety? If the top law enforcement officials, including SLED Chief Mark Keel and my local Chief Reynolds, don't want this bill, doctors and surgeons don't want this bill, polls show overwhelmingly voters of both parties don't want this bill, and at best, gun owners are split on this, then what's the rush to pass this bill? 3094 is not about an academic discussion of constitutional rights. This is about the life and death of the people we love and the police officers in our community. Why is the Senate not doing its due diligence and taking the time to travel the state with a panel to discuss this issue with community members across South Carolina? Try and find common ground and accommodation on this important issue. 3-minute testimony with a false deadline of the end of this legislative session, quite frankly, doesn't cut it. What's the rush? If 3094 takes a pause this session, the next day, I will be able to go out and buy the gun of my choice, my 2A rights secured. Some folks have said South Carolina should not be different than other states. We should join other states that have open carry. Well, we now know that many states with open carry have much stronger gun laws in place than South Carolina. South Carolina should be proud to be a leader and not rush through a bill with life and death consequences. Let's have a substantial statewide conversation and try and find common ground. Don't rush through 3094. There is no need for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zalka. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Zalka? If not, thank you very much. Mr. Reese, Kenneth Reese. Is he still here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, and where are you from?
From Summerville, South Carolina.
All right, and are you with a group?
I am by myself today.
Thank you.
All right, so I am a 8.5-year veteran of the United States Army. I am 100% disabled due to injuries that I sustained while in the military. And I want to touch on some of the points that I've heard be brought forth here today by both doctors and other people. The doctors bring forth the bullet holes in children. This sounds like, to me, fear-mongering at its most, because of the fact that for your point, bullet holes in children, what is the percentage? What is the person that says that a concealed carrier, law-abiding citizen, open carrier actually created that issue? 9 chances out of 10, it's not going to be the concealed carrier. It's going to be the criminal. And then we brought forth the fact of the Second Amendment and the militia, right? Well, in 1775, the United States recognized the militaries, right? So they were created in 1775 as a group. In 1791, 16 years later, the Second Amendment was given to the people of the United States. So therefore, there were trained people. Now, my big point on open carry with training is the fact that according to section 162320, the unlawful carry of a handgun does not allow a person currently in the state to openly carry. Everybody knows this, right? So if I go into a store, I reach up on a counter, grab something, my gun comes out from underneath my shirt, or say somebody sees it printing, I am committing a misdemeanor crime. And all it has to happen is somebody would go to or call the police, and I'm in violation of the law, which is a misdemeanor crime, which is a fine of up to $1,000 and 1 year in prison. And then on top of that, the police department in section B of section 162350, under penalties, dispositions, fines, and forfeitures, section B says that I forfeit that gun that was in that crime. So a simple reach up on a counter, grabbing something off the counter, and my gun comes out or something happens, I lose my right to that gun? No, that's not acceptable. And everybody says, oh, well, people are going to be more violent, more this, more that. I've carried a gun since I was 18 years old. I've carried a gun, both in the military and outside the military. I'm not a violent person. I've never shot somebody. In fact, in Charleston, in 2007, I saved a lady who was being beat on the side of the street by her boyfriend at the time, and he tried to kidnap her baby. And if it wasn't for me and my family pulling up with a gun, he would have killed her, because he said in the court case that he was going to kill her. So I strongly, strongly urge you to do your right, or do what's right, and let 3094 pass. And I support constitutional carry as well, but I'm tired of all the fear mongering.
Mr. Reese, thank you for your testimony, but more importantly, I want to thank you for your service. What branch were you in?
United States Army.
Thank you for your service. We want to thank you for your testimony. Does anybody have any questions?
No, but I'd like to thank you for his service to our country. And thank you for saving that lady.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Reese. Dorothy Duncan.
Yes. Thank
All right.
you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. Oh, raise my right hand. Sorry.
And, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. So where are you from?
I am from Simpsonville, and Representative Cox is actually my representative. Hi.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today regarding this bill. As a registered nurse and a healthcare professional who actually worked in the Department of Veterans Affairs for over 41 years and retired as a regional director for the Office of the Inspector General, I consider gun violence in this country a public health crisis. I'm in opposition of this bill, but I'm not in opposition of the Second Amendment or responsible gun ownership. In fact, we have a gun in our house. I don't understand the purpose or the necessity of this bill for open carry for private citizens in South Carolina, no matter what permit or training is involved. My tax dollars go to support law enforcement, and at no time have I felt it necessary to carry a weapon to protect myself, because I trust the law enforcement professionals to handle crime. If you want to make us a safer state, I'd love you to vote to enact a law to close the Charleston loophole for background checks and to protect those at extreme risk for temporarily removing guns from potentially violent people. We know those laws actually do decrease gun loss. gun deaths, excuse me. The recent story of a minister who was killed after a robber gained possession of his handgun while the minister was using it to defend himself actually reflects a more common scenario than someone who actually succeeds in defending themselves with a gun. Mr. Reese obviously was an exception to that rule, and that's wonderful. We know that states with open carry have more gun deaths. Handguns are used in 94% of gun deaths, and open carry makes them easier to access. I don't want to live in a vigilante environment where private citizens take the law into their own hands. How would anyone know if a person who's openly carry really does have that right to carry that and has gone through the training? I don't know how that would ever be enforced. We lived in Texas. One of the reasons I signed up to talk to you today, because we did have open carry there. And we lived there for 3 years ago before we moved to South Carolina. One of the reasons I wanted to get out of Texas was because of the increase in seeing guns openly. It was intimidating and it was frightening. The person next to me in a suburban grocery who was buying a head of lettuce actually had a gun strapped to his hip. And we'd go into a restaurant, it was a family restaurant, and people would have guns openly. It was very difficult with a grandchild trying to explain to a 5-year-old why that person needed to have a gun while they were eating chicken. Road rage shootings increased dramatically. There were gun deaths that affected private citizens who weren't even involved in the crimes, but they were caught in the crossfire. I just don't understand why this is necessary. And I think the vast majority of South Carolinians, based on polls, actually feel the same. If you're a survivor of gun violence, PTSD is a real thing. And trust me, I understand PTSD with having worked with veterans for 41 years.
Ms. Duncan, we're at 3 minutes and 20 seconds. If you could please summarize your comments.
Okay, I am sorry for the timeliness issues. I just want to say that I think our current climate is very unstable in this country, and we've had more gun sales than in the last year than we've ever had in this country. So I really believe that our lawmakers should represent the citizens and not their own interests, and I'm not sure that's happening. So I really need to just ask you, if you will please ask yourselves, how will this bill benefit the majority of citizens in South Carolina? Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Duncan. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Duncan? If not, we'll move to the next person. Thank you for bringing in Lori Carter. Ms. Carter with us. Lori Carter.
Yes, I'm here.
Carter, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Where are you from?
Indian land?
That's in York County.
No, it's Lancaster County, sir.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Lori DeCenzo Carter, and I'm an Indian land resident and a high school social studies teacher. Over the course of my career, I've lost 5 young men to gun violence. I've helped bury 2. The other 3 are spending the rest of their lives behind bars for being on the wrong side of a gun. Their names are Rakeem, Paul, Dion, Raheem, and Sidedrian. There are many social conditions that have contributed to their stories, but that is not the purpose of this hearing. Please allow me to share why I am gravely concerned about House Bill 3094. As the subcommittee is aware, a significant number of crimes are committed with stolen guns. According to a study conducted by American Progress, in the 5-year period covering 2012 to 2017, 68,628 stolen guns were used in crimes in South Carolina. Further, the Federal Bureau of Justice Statistics conducted a study entitled Use of Firearms Involved in Crimes, Survey of Prison Inmates 2016. In that study, it was found that 1 in 5 federal prisoners used stolen guns in the crimes they committed. Research has proven that guns are stolen from homes or cars where the owner does not safely store the weapon. The bill before the subcommittee will certainly add to the number of stolen guns on our South Carolina streets. Instead of promoting open carry, our House and Senate should be working to pass laws that require safe storage and liability insurance. This will help promote safe gun ownership and has the potential to save lives. Quite honestly, given one of the nation's bloodiest mass shootings occurred in Charleston and the recent shootings in Rock Hill, it is appalling to me that our elected officials continue to consider this bill. The bill lacks support from our law enforcement community, our medical community, small business owners, and concealed carry weapon trainers vehemently oppose it as well. I beg you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Carter, thank you very much. I want to thank you for your service as a teacher. Are you still a teacher?
Yes, sir, I am.
Does anybody have any questions, Ms. Carter? If not, thank you very much. Then we have I don't know if it's a lady or a man. It's a Stewart, R Stewart or V Stewart. We have a Stewart, last name Stewart. Oh, Chief Stewart.
I'm just observing. I'm just observing the meeting. I thought this is the way you needed to do it. I stand on my testimony. I stand on my testimony 2 days ago opposing the bill. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you. Is there anybody else who signed in to testify?
Yes, I did.
Looks like we got a couple people. I can't tell their names. Can y'all see?
Adelaide Bennett, and I see Dr. Mack also.
All right, well, let's take Dr. Mack. Dr. Mack.
Hi there.
Hey, good morning. Would you please raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self you got?
I do.
What's your full name?
Elizabeth Mack.
Where are you from?
Charleston.
All right. You're a physician?
I am. Here on behalf of myself.
All right.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Mack, and I'll be brief. I'm a pediatric critical care physician here in Charleston, and I'm the vice president of the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I was born and raised in South Carolina. My mother dedicated her career to law enforcement, and I'm here to speak to you through a child health lens and in opposition of House Bill 3094. I have resuscitated and declared far too many of South Carolina's children dead related to intentional and unintentional firearm injury. And as previously stated, mentally ill citizens won't necessarily flag on a background check because there's not a registry or a list. How will we know if someone is legally openly carrying without stopping to ask them for proof? Children are not afraid to grab a visible weapon, and I see this every day. Every day, many kids have died this way, and unfortunately, there's no fear mongering here. It's just the truth. It's what we see every day. Kids from all walks of life shot, killed, mangled, intentionally and unintentionally. And the evidence supports locking up weapons, storing them unloaded and separate from ammunition. This is just science. South Carolina has proven we need a number of major interventions, and I would respectfully ask how this helps our gun violence crisis. Many businesses and certainly healthcare facilities do not allow people to bring weapons inside like our own for good evidence-based reasons. Open carry increases the likelihood of conflict, severely endangering public safety. Research shows us that the visible presence of firearms alters behavior and the increased likelihood of conflict. And I'm happy to provide these references. As you know, 911 calls from concerned citizens about people openly carrying can create confusion for responding officers and endanger both the officers and the gun carriers. These issues are well documented in the literature. Linking open carry to increased violence is not a stretch, it's just the evidence. Adults have the responsibility of protecting our future. It's our turn to protect our children, to think about our future, our kids. And every time I declare a child dead due to preventable causes such as firearm injury, I think about how we adults and voters have the ability to prevent these deaths. And if you could take a tour through our state's pediatric ICUs, I believe you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked to see infants, toddlers, school-age children, teens, all with their lives forever changed or lost related to gun violence. And as Chief Reynolds said, the benefits really do not outweigh the risks, in my opinion. These are not theoretical risks. They are real evidence-based risks. And we have the evidence and the stories to inform us of our children. I really believe, what more do we need? My colleagues and I are here to care for your children and your grandchildren in the pediatric ICU and in the children's hospital. But so much of what we care for is preventable, including all of these firearm injuries. Not every state sees what we see. My partners are often shocked when they move to this state and they see so many children shot, mangled, and dead. Consider the children in your lives. Is it worth it? If you came to work in our hospitals for a day, I think you'd think not. Many of my colleagues received a mass casualty page, including myself, on June 17, 2015. And we waited and waited in the trauma bay, and no one ever came. It's our turn as South Carolinians to be on the right side of history and to oppose House Bill 3094 because our children's lives depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. And thank you for your service as a physician. Any questions, Dr. Mack? All right, none. Randy Jones. Randy Jones. Mr. Jones.
I'm here.
Good morning. Can you please raise your right hand? I can't see you, but I can hear you. Is it?
Let me see if I can. Sorry, I can't get my my video back on.
That's no problem. Just raise your right hand. I'm gonna trust you that it's raised. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you got it?
I do.
All right, we can hear you.
My name is Randy Jones. I'm from Belton, South Carolina. I'm here to represent myself and also to speak for South Carolina Carry for the upstate. I'm the upstate leader for South Carolina Carry. I just wanted to answer a couple of questions from your Tuesday hearing. I wasn't able to participate then, but the question has come up several times, like, why do we need this? And as a concealed weapons permit holder and a person that takes responsibility for my personal safety as well as my family, then I do carry. I carry just about every day. There are several times where I may be carrying with a concealment garment. I go to a restaurant, maybe it's very uncomfortably hot. And right now, the people that have been speaking against this bill, most of their efforts are to really try to take away our gun rights or to penalize legal gun owners. But I would like to have.
Mr. Jones, we're gonna have to take a short, we're gonna come back to your testimony. Can we just stay on?
Okay,
There's
fine.
a Senate vote going on. We gotta go vote. But we'll be right back. Okay, so just
Okay,
sit
thank you.
Right, we're not gonna recede. We're just gonna step out for a moment. Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
All right, we're back. And if you would start, you pick back up where you were. You're from Belton with South Carolina Care. You were telling us why we need the bill.
Yes, I just want to make sure that that people understand that as a legal gun owner and as a CWP carrier, I risk being penalized through rules that prevent me from being able to open carry. I can't take my jacket off or concealment garment in a restaurant. If I'm at home working, which I typically carry when I'm at home working, if I decide to run to the store to get some gas for my lawnmower and I have forgotten my cover garment, that I have to stop and take my gun out and store it in my car, which increases the likelihood for my weapon to be stolen from my car. So the whole purpose for this bill really does benefit gun owners immensely. I'd also like to point out that we have a Republican majority in the Senate and the House, and the voters have sent you there for a purpose, to represent us, not your personal views. So I would just ask that you support this bill because your voters have put you there to do that. I know this should be a bipartisan effort here. We should have bipartisan support for this bill, but I sort of recognize that we're not going to get that kind of support from the Democrats, but I would ask for the Republicans in the Senate to do even better than they did in the House. And let's get this thing to a roll call vote. We want to see where our senators stand on this so that we can, deal with that accordingly at the next election. It's very important for our senators and representatives to represent the people. And in this state, there's no excuse for us not to continue to push for better Second Amendment rights, including constitutional carry, which I fully support. And I would like to point out that the sheriffs in both Anderson and Greenville County in the upstate have both voiced their support for this constitutional carry as well as open carry, through the South Carolina Carry Group. So I'd just like to let you know that there are law enforcement people that do support this and protecting our constitutional rights. Thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. Anybody have any questions? If not, we'll go to Adelaida Bennett. Adelaida Bennett.
Yes, thank you. I'm here.
All right, will you please raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, where are you from?
Charleston.
All right, and are you with the group?
No, I'm for myself.
All right, you are all ears.
Thank you. Good morning. As I said, my name is Adelaide Bennett. I live in Charleston, where many people live and work in close proximity to one another. Our density is even higher year-round because of the tourists that are here to visit. While other people giving testimony on Tuesday had to admit upon questioning that they had not seen anyone openly carrying a gun in neighboring open carry states, the relevant point, I believe, is that this bill, 3094, completely allows that possibility of seeing open carry every day on every street. People who live in rural and suburban areas may not be confronted with that sight every day, but it is a certainty that in cities and large towns, we will have to endure this and its violent possibilities. I don't want to see tourists outside my front door, or frankly, any neighbor walking their dog with a gun on their hip. The conspicuous display of a firearm is not only intimidating, but can escalate tension and confrontation among people in an unnecessary way. I don't want to have to explain to my young grandsons why the people near us at the park or the beach have to wear guns. Is it because they have to protect themselves all the time with a gun? What kind of message and unhealthy stress does that inflict on these young people? How many children will grow up believing that they just have to wear one as well, multiplying the number of guns in our state exponentially? With this difficult year of the pandemic, our economy needs for us to be out, going to the movies or restaurants, shopping in person, and supporting the small businesses that are the backbone of our economy. Open carry will be a sad deterrent for many people to do these things for fear of being around gun toters that are ready to brandish their weapon at any moment. In addition, our economy in Charleston is especially dependent on tourism from other states and other countries. It would be a terrible shame for our entertainment and tourism industries to suffer because of a perception that South Carolina has indeed joined the Wild Wild West. I sadly think it is a perfectly appropriate label. In a year when our healthcare system has been so terribly burdened by COVID, I can't understand how you would consider adding to this burden with even more victims of gun violence than we already have in this state. I know I don't have facts to prove that, but this is my understanding. Why now? What is the rush? The NRA paid lobbyists from out of state who spoke on Tuesday could not come up with one real reason as to why we need open carry. That is simply because there really is none. Concealed carry already offers the necessary protection that the Second Amendment gives us. Most of our citizens are against this bill. So who is it that you are listening to? Please listen to us, the people of South Carolina. Please stop open carry. Please vote no on H.3094. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bennett. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Bennett? I don't see any. Thank you again for your testimony. All right, does anybody else that's signed in that wants to testify that has not? I don't see any. Am I correct? There's not anybody else? Are we correct? There's no one else? All right, so we've heard from everybody who wanted that signed in. All right, okay. Okay, I got proxies from Malloy and from Massey in writing, and I got a verbal proxy from Gibson. So they've all instructed me how they want to vote on the bill if we get to a vote here.
Is it up to the chair, subcommittee to make it in that search?
We just want to have the proxy in writing. Why don't we take a short, brief recess and let's get that in writing. Don't go anywhere. We're not going to sign off. We just need to handle a housekeeping issue. All right, good. We're back. Senator Kempson has joined us again. We've concluded all the people that have signed in to testify today. Of course, we heard testimony the other day for an hour and 45 minutes. We heard testimony on the other day for an hour and 45 minutes. And then we've heard testimony today since 9:30. And we're an hour and 15 minutes into it. So we've had about 3 hours worth of testimony so far. Is there any discussion on the bill H.3094? Senator from McCormick?
It seems to me, having listened to both sides, it seems to me that this is one of those kinds of issues that the full committee needs to look at and think about. Bipartisan, so it can be reviewed by all sides. I'm just thinking in terms of such an important issue. If it's not a referendum issue, it's something that we all discuss. And if it gets to the floor, obviously it ought to be discussed even more. So I move for favorable report to get it to the full committee.
All right. There's a second. I have Senator Massey's proxy and Senator Malloy's proxy. Massey will second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? I will note that the bill as drafted does not change who can carry a handgun or where they can carry a handgun. It would allow a permit holder in South Carolina who can currently carry concealed to also carry openly within the parameters established in the bill. And that there are other states, I think it's research shows 45 other states allow some sort of open handgun carry, including Georgia and North Carolina. Been a lot of testimony. It's very compelling on both sides. I think it's ready for a vote. Is there any more discussion? If not, all those in favor of giving this bill a favorable report as, I would add one more thing. I have taken extensive notes and there may be some amendments that would be prudent based on the testimony, but any amendments will be offered if the bill does move forward. They'll be offered at the full committee or at some later time rather than this morning. So is there any more discussion? If not, we move to a vote. All those in favor of giving this a favorable report, moving it to the next level of discussion in the Senate at the committee level, indicate by saying aye. 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 Senator Massey votes aye. Anyone votes no? No. Senator Kempson votes no. Senator Malloy vote no by proxy. Senator Massey's vote was by proxy. So by 3-2 vote, we move the bill forward to the full committee.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. You see there's no more business for this subcommittee. We'll now adjourn for the day. Thank you very much.